Let's take a look at one of the many ways to set up an all-over edge-to-edge pantograph pattern. Pantograph patterns will start at one edge of the quilt and go to the other side of the quilt, irregardless of blocks or borders. From the main menu, we first need to create the file we'll use to sew out the pantograph on our quilt. In the Design and Create menu, select Pantograph. Depending upon what you were doing with Quilt Path prior to this tutorial, you may be asked to set your safe area. Follow the prompts on the screen to set it. This is the Panto Stacker screen. Let's take a look around. In the upper left, you'll see our Home button, and that would take us back to the main menu. To the right of that button, we have a Select Pattern button, which is also found in the lower left area as well. We have a Save button and our Undo, Redo buttons. The Reset button next to that is basically a master undo. Once we bring in a pattern to develop our pantograph, we could use Reset to get rid of any and all changes we've made. However, if you want to erase everything and return the screen to a blank slate like we see here, you'd use the big red X. Next, you have the Zoom menu. The Printer button takes you to the Print menu. The Ruler allows you to use the machine as a giant ruler, which allows you to measure from one point on the table to another point. You've got a Help button up there too, which takes you to the PDF manual. The other two buttons are for more advanced work that we'll cover in a later lesson. To make our pantograph, you'll note we are in the Easy mode, which is the default mode. Let's first select a pattern. Look inside the Continuous Line catalog, scroll down, and press on Loops, Triple, and Open. You'll see that Quilt Path opened it in the default size, but that isn't the size we need for our quilt. We're going to pretend that we have a quilt top that is 30 inches by 40 inches. We want to ask Quilt Path to make a pantograph file we can use that is slightly bigger than the quilt top we will work with to sew out our design. So let's add a couple of inches to each dimension to allow for a little fudge factor in case our quilt top has some fullness and isn't perfectly square. That would mean that for our 30-inch by 40-inch quilt, we will ask our height to be 32 inches and our width to be 42 inches. Now let's set the height we want for our rows. This is a very open basic pattern, so let's make our pattern height 3 inches and our pattern width to be 10 inches. Do you see what Quilt Path is doing? It takes care of the calculations for you. Quilt Path knows how many rows and how many repeats of the pattern will fit in the space we've given it. Now let's do some fine-tuning. Let's link the pattern to its neighbors, first by toggling the nesting button until the blue dot is in the top position. Do you see the empty space we have on the left and on the right of our quilt space? That is because a full repeat of this pattern won't fit in the small space left. Well, we want Quilt Path to stretch the pattern to completely fill the space from left to right. That can be done with the horizontal stretch button. Do you see the extra space we have at the top and the bottom of our layout? That is because we can't fit a full repeat of our pattern in the space. Tap on the vertical stretch button and watch as Quilt Path adjusts the pantograph so it fills the space top to bottom. Take a look at how our pattern's dimensions have slightly changed in order to meet our requests. The best way to learn about Quilt Path is to experiment. Tap a button, and if you don't like the effects, just hit undo. Some of the buttons even have multiple settings, so you can experiment with them by toggling through the button choices. For example, take a look at the different kinds of nesting using this button. If you look below, you can see the kind of nesting you're currently using. Toggle this button and take a look at how it changes the pattern. We are interested in the nest ends type of nesting. Do you see the pink partial patterns? That shows that the pattern is wrapping around from the end of one side to the beginning of the row. The group of buttons to the right controls sizing of the rows. We can make all the rows bigger or smaller. Right now though, let's look at the stagger buttons for odd and even rows. The Easy Panto Stacker gives you the option of offsetting a pattern by 50%. If you'd like to have more control over the amount you offset, you'll need to use the basic Panto Stacker or advanced Panto Stacker. See those lessons for more information. Click on the Stagger button for odd rows. Do you see that we've offset our pattern by 50%? Take a look at the pink sections of our pattern. The pink sections indicate the portions of the pattern that have been wrapped from one end of the row to the other side of the row to produce the stagger we requested. We can even flip the rows on the vertical or horizontal axis. Tap one time on the horizontal axis button and it will flip all the patterns in the odd rows. Let's tap it again and see what happens. Now it has flipped every other pattern in the odd rows. Tap again and it flips the opposite patterns in every other row. Of course, this isn't what we want because we want to sew out a continuous line of stitching. We don't want stops and starts all along our quilt. So press the flip button one more time and we are back to where we started. Let's play a little bit with the size of our rows. First, we want to select the size of the step we wish to take. Press on step to toggle to the size of the change you wish to make. Your choices are tiny, small, medium, large, and jumbo. Let's toggle this to small, and once you select the size step you wish to take, press on the size buttons. Now we are ready to quilt, and we have two choices. We can save this pantograph layout we've created, or we can go ahead and quilt it as rows. Please notice that we can't quilt it as a single pattern because this layout is bigger than the safe area we have to sew within on our table. If we were using this looped pattern in a border, we could sew it as a single pattern because in the border we most likely would be using a single row of the pattern. For now, let's save this layout. Tap on the Save icon. Let's put our layouts in their own folder away from the master pattern files. Tap on Patterns. Let's create a new folder by tapping on New, and we'll call this folder Panto Layouts. Tap OK. Now double tap on our new folder we just made. Tap inside the file name box and name this Panto layout. I'm going to call mine Triple Looped E to E Easy 3242. E to E stands for edge to edge. The next step would be stitching it out. Be sure to watch the lesson on how to sew pantograph layouts.